Anyway.
Well, Jim, another popular topic I'm sure you're aware of. I don't know how much you've read it. I'm just catching up on all this myself. WWE President Nick Khan did an interview with Ariel Helwani. And a lot of the comments and quotes from this have gone viral and people are talking about them. And have you seen any of this?
I've read, I didn't listen to the tapes. I read some of the transcripts, right? And the comments. And are we absolutely positively sure that Nick Khan and Tony Khan are not related?
I believe we are sure of that, yes.
Are you sure this is, maybe even their brothers-in-law or something? Is there some under the table con going on here?
No, I don't think
so. Because I got to be honest with you, things are changing quickly.
Yes.
And we've said that, sorry, folks, for those of you out there listening, Twinkle Toes McFingerbang and the Cucamonga Kids were not going to get the job done on a real television program in a real wrestling promotion on a real mainstream basis in the real world. And they haven't so far. They've had their dedicated 1 million or less viewers and the people that will fly anywhere and pay any amount of money to see the guy stick his hands in his pockets and, you know, people just parody wrestling. But it was a niche product and it was never going to get any bigger with those guys because they don't know how to get bigger. And that's why I think that Vince McMahon completely dismissed them. And I've said this before, the WWE 2 years ago was giving mid-card guys $750,000 a year offers for multiple years to get them to not sign with the new promotion that a billionaire's son was starting. Then they saw the promotion and they saw what it looked like on television. They saw who they were employing. And around about that time, Vince McMahon fired the two people that were in charge of his company that were giving all those big offers out, right? And I believe I mentioned that I'm not surprised because now that Vince has seen this television program, he knows they've got nothing to worry about. And that was 2 years ago next month, right? Well, what he didn't realize and what apparently nobody else thought of either is when he fired the two that were running the company before and he brings in this Hollywood mover and shaker, old Nick Khan, who's running this company like a movie studio or Disney on Parade or, any other Hollywood entity, and just assuming that you have an endless supply of actors and they play parts and it's all the things that somebody who doesn't know anything about wrestling, has never been involved in wrestling, would assume about wrestling. Now they're pissing off so much fucking talent, either pissing them off with the way they're portrayed, pissing them off with the way they're treated, pissing them off in general, that this worm is starting to turn quickly. And I was right with Vince on not giving mid-card guys ridiculous amounts of money to stay for this promotion that now you can see what it looks like. It's the shits and it ain't going anywhere and fuck it. But that doesn't mean that you should be actively firing, releasing, humiliating, demeaning, or pissing off the stars that you have that a bunch of people know. Because now they wouldn't make up with CM Punk. They fired him on his wedding day. They did all that other shit. They sued him and tried to bankrupt him. So he goes for a bunch of money. And what did they do? The TV show that he debuted on a new night, later in the night, did what the fifth highest number that their Wednesday night show would have ever done, or maybe fourth. Over 1 million people. They tried their regular show in that same time slot a couple months ago and ended up with 500,000. They doubled that for CM Punk on a Friday night. That he brought as many people to the show himself as they had watching everybody else put together.
And he wasn't advertised.
And he wasn't advertised. And that's probably, as we mentioned, going to be reflected in the ratings going forwards with everything that he's on. And we said, what, last week? Is he going to break 200,000, 250,000 on a regular basis? Maybe we'll find out. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Bryan Danielson, who loves to wrestle, and if he had been probably treated better there in his various stints and used to more of his potential and what he deserved with the following he had, you can't tell me he would have left there and gone some new place all of a sudden. But no, now he's going to show up next month, and that stadium in New York is going to go batshit, and babies are going to fly in the air. Hopefully people have tennis rackets to bat the babies away from them when they come back down. No.
There'll be no batting of babies in Queens.
No batting of babies. Bray Wyatt. Now they're talking like he's going to go there because they just let this guy go. And I know they had done almost everything that they could do to him, including setting him on fire and burning him alive in the middle of the ring, but that's their fault. The guy, everybody that I've talked to, everybody, wrestling fan and casual fan alike, has said, yeah, Bray Wyatt was great when he was the leader of the Wyatt family and the Swamp people and all that stuff. When The Fiend came along and all the supernatural bullshit and you started watching him, Cornette, that's when everything went to shit. So if they get Bray Wyatt without making him this puppeteer with these fucking silly, goofy puppets and the foolish science fiction stuff, and he doesn't sell being run over by a truck, if they get Bray Wyatt wrestler that apparently people liked before the WWE ruined him, there's something. Ric Flair. Ric fucking Flair. He would have been content to work with and for Vince McMahon and the WWE for the rest of his natural life, which he's already 70. He'll be 72 no, he was 72 in February. But instead, they make him look like a complete fucking moron in that love triangle thing with Lacey Evans. And then not only was it a bad angle, but then she gets pregnant and just goes home and drops the whole thing, and he's turned on his daughter. I'm telling you, they ought to have no pregnancy clauses in these women's contracts. So now Flair's pissed off and tells Vince he doesn't like the way that Charlotte's being booked, and why would he? She was just in the ring with a goddamn 12-year-old in a homemade costume. And Vince, I guess that it basically went like, well, if you don't like it, pal, you want your release? Yeah, I goddamn do. I can see that happening from both those people. So now Flair's released. He'll be showing up anytime. Are they going to piss Charlotte off so that she can join her father and her fiancé? Then they've lost that. Who gets pissed next? I'm sure Braun Strowman. They can afford Braun Strowman. That even AEW is not that stupid. They bring that big lunkhead in and pay him a bunch of money, but they could if they wanted to.
Hey, realistically, depending on the multiple they wanted, and again, to be majority owner, you don't have to put up majority cash. If the Khans wanted to, they could buy fucking WWE. When everyone's talking about a WWE sale, don't overlook the fact that that's the family that could actually do it if they wanted to. I don't know if Vince would want to sell it. Nick Khan probably would. He's just looking for a deal.
Well, and see, that's the thing, is that we started this talking about Nick Khan. He's gone completely the opposite direction from whereas they were bribing people not to go to AEW. Now they're rushing them out the door. But they're not. The reason why I'm sure that everybody took the first look at AEW and said, well, there's no reason to be upset here because, again, look at the show. Whether you like it or not, whether it's AEW fans out there not wanting to hear this, it went on the air as a complete clusterfuck. Nobody knew what they were doing. Subpar talent. They were featuring Jelly Nutella and Sonny Kiss as a tag team. Remember the legless boy in the in the Battle Royal. The TV was the shits. Then the pandemic happened. The TV was even shittier. But they didn't have mainstream talent. They didn't have people that the average person would view as stars. It was left up to the booker to make them stars. And we all know about the booking. It's been nonsensical and erratic since day one. So they were looking at that show going, well, they're hopeless. But they didn't look at that show and what would happen to it if they suddenly gave them half a dozen or more nationally known mainstream stars. Adam Cole. When's Adam Cole? He's done unless they smarten up and give him whatever he wants to stay. And you've said it yourself, Vince will probably never use him on the main roster, so he knows he's limited. He can go over there and be with his girlfriend, probably make as much money or maybe more, work less.
And his friends. And
play with his friends, because a lot of these guys, it's not about business. It's about playing with their friends. And the reason why everybody wants to go to AEW is because they know we can do whatever we want. We'll be allowed to do anything we want. Because Tony Khan is the nicest guy in the world. He'll let us do anything and pay us a bunch of money. And he doesn't know how to book. So it's even more likely that we'll be able to do whatever we want to do. And all those guys saying that don't understand that they don't know what they ought to be doing. And you have no authority figure. I'm not talking about a fake TV authority figure. I'm talking about the guy that runs that fucking locker room, that puts his foot down and runs everything with a fucking iron hand, and nobody steps out of line. And here's the rules that we stick by in this fucking company, and you will stick by them or you will be out on your ass, et cetera, et cetera. There's nobody. It's just, hey, kids, let's put on a show.
Hey, what are you doing for dinner afterwards?
Yeah, let's go to dinner. And so they're getting handed major stars that the people know and that can get over. Because Nick Khan is running this thing like a Hollywood studio, and there's just an endless supply of actors and an endless supply of it. They've completely lost the plot, and they've handed Tony Khan, for all the bad booking, you don't know what's going to happen because everybody is headed there because they've all been mistreated, demeaned, demoralized, pissed off, whatever. Tim Walbert. I said this to you before we went on the air. There was a clip that AEW put out that I retweeted this. On Punk's return that night at Rampage, AEW put out a special, look, it's on their YouTube channel or whatever, but behind the scenes of Punk's return. And one of the things they did was they put a camera in the production truck, and you got to hear the director and see the director calling the camera shots and running the production while Punk was making his entrance in that building. And either the entrance would be at a small screen and you'd see the camera in the truck, or elsewise it would come back to the entrance for a while, but you would still hear the director. Timmy Walbert is the director. He's the best live event wrestling director on the planet Earth. He did 20-something camera shoots for WrestleMania. He started out in the 80s as a handheld camera guy for the WWF. And years ago, he's not a fan, let's just say, like everybody else, he's not a fan of Kevin Dunn's demeanor or his personality or the way he treats people. So he said, fuck the WWF, and he went and did Major League Baseball. Timmy Walbert has directed fucking World Series games, for fuck's sake. And he came back, he did a couple of shows for TNA back when I was there, simply because they were transitioning, needed a director, but he likes wrestling, and he did it at honestly less than his normal rate because he likes wrestling, but they couldn't use him full time because he was doing Major League Baseball. He's the guy that went in Ring of Honor. He lived down the road from Baltimore in Maryland. He brought a former handheld camera guy named Chris DeFeria he directed one of the Ring of Honor TV tapings as a favor to me for free one night. And we paid Chris a fee to come up and teach the Sinclair cameramen how to be cameramen. And Tim ran the truck and directed the episode to try to get everybody on board with how things were done, what to go on. He's a great guy. But they had an NBA arena. They had 18,000 people in it. They had a legitimate production there because there wasn't any of the bullshit that you would see in the early days of this program from a production standpoint. And they had a major star, CM Punk. That's why I said that segment did not look like AEW television. That segment looked like wrestling when it was over. An NBA arena full of people going batshit over a major star and good-looking production. That's the first time that AEW has had all four of those things at the same time. And with Danielson and Wyatt and or Flair and or Cole and or the next person to get pissed off, they're going to give them more opportunities to do that. They are handing this over in a quick period of time and don't even realize it. So this is very interesting. And I will not now poo-poo AEW's chances over the next few months like I've been poo-pooing for the past couple of years, because sooner or later a blind squirrel finds a nut, whether this has been serendipity, planning, or quite a bit of both. They've changed the fucking stratosphere here a bit, just over in the last month. And it looks like it'll continue to go that way because the other side is the gang that can't shoot straight. I'm amazed. I am amazed at the reversal, as they used to say in the business, of suddenly Tony Khan has just gone behind Vince and waist-locked him. And he's fixing Iron Sheik and Brian Blair his ass if he's not careful.
It's a very interesting time. Let's talk a little bit about this before we get back to the Nick Khan interview, because you're really talking about the state of WWE versus AEW today in late August 2021. I've been saying it for a while. AEW has the momentum, and right now they're about to go into a period of time where they're going to add Bryan Danielson and who knows who else. WWE's running on fumes with that star system, for lack of a better term, like the old film studio star system. And AEW is doing it very differently. So the good and the bad, you're getting raw talent on TV. Again, good and bad.
Yeah.
You're not getting watered down, bad acting. And if you are getting bad acting, it's people doing it on their own, not being directed to act bad.
It's their own fault then, at least.
I have a world of concerns about the AEW booking. One of the few things that gives me long-term hope is that I've seen it firsthand. When I was at Sony, I saw it firsthand. Executive vice presidents come and go. I've seen executive vice presidents dragged out of their office into a freight elevator while their secretary empties everything into boxes. Executive vice presidents come and go. I'm not a fan of the Young Bucks vision of the tag team division. I don't know if they'll be with AEW forever. Same thing with Omega and everything he does. Cody, look, quite frankly, Cody's the most frustrating because he's the one in the past that would give you those moments where you thought he kind of got the concept and then it wouldn't work out and then he would disappear. But I think that Cody, wrestling's always been a vehicle as opposed to wrestling being the thing. Wrestling was always a vehicle to get him to someplace else, but now they're adding the star power.
But
they've got a foundation.
Let me just flesh out. Cody can give you the matches that Twinkle Toes can't, and that obviously the Hardley Boys can't. Cody can cut promos that sometimes they get a little off-putting because of their ostentatiousness.
Oh, yeah.
But he can talk, which is something that the Cucamonga kids can't do, and that old Harpo is just, unless it's a phone sex line, he's the shits at it. But Cody would also be the one to say, I don't need to do this all the time, and I don't need to be featured all the time. He can be an EVP and be here today and gone tomorrow and back and forth, and he doesn't need to be in the middle of everything. The others, they have to be involved in this because they're trying to, look, the Bucks buried FTR, so they wouldn't be shown up there. They signed them.
For real. For anyone thinking we're joking around about that, you have no idea.
No, just look at the goddamn evidence in front of your eyes, for fuck's sake. They signed them up, they beat them, they diminish them, and then They might be having matches on Dark now if their substandard ring hadn't crippled Cash Wheeler. But anyway, because that was the other team that everybody said, oh, the Bucks and FTR are the greatest teams. Well, we'll fix that. With Harpo, he can't get out of his own way, and Callis tries to get him over. But the point is, Punk, Danielson, a Cole, or a Wyatt, these guys render completely irrelevant the Cucamonga Kids and especially, and to much extent, Twinkle Toes. And also remember, not only have the Hardley Boys screwed up the tag team division, but Twinkle Toes is the one who has sabotaged the women's division from the start, thinking again that these outlaw, indie, Japanese gimmick girls that pretend to be wrestlers for the fetish things over there are going to get over on national United States television. And of course, Britt Baker was the gimme that, it shows all they've been doing is trying to go for these goofy Japanese schoolgirls and the princesses and the Joshis and all that other shit. And the one girl that's gotten over is Britt Baker, because she's American and she can talk and she can work instead of wearing frills and lace and dressing up in genie outfits or wearing fake Freddie Mercury mustaches. Did you see Emi Sakura, the Freddie Mercury wannabe, has actually moved here from Japan now to the United States?
Thank goodness.
I hope she didn't sign a long-term lease, because the more that Twinkle Toes' power fades as he fades into irrelevance, hopefully we'll get rid of the Japanese outlaw girl pipeline and they can shore up their women's division a bit, since they've got one girl now that's over.
Well, again, going back to my point, because you just decided to turn this into going after the Japanese women again.
Where the fuck? You mentioned the EVPs.
Yeah.
They're unnecessary now. It should have been a publicity stunt from the start, which is what I told him he should have done, which was tell the people that you're going to be nice to the wrestlers, you're not going to be the evil empire, and set up a player fucking board that associates and interrelates and is liaisons to the office, so that you've got somebody in there that is taking up for the wrestlers and the athletes on the roster. I didn't say really legitimately make them real executive vice presidents. That's the stupidest thing that anybody's ever done. Unless you've got a guy that's indispensable to your business, that has already proven to be that's already proven to be the reason why you're making most of your money. Lawler in Memphis, or Bill Longson in St. Louis, or any other guy that was figured in like in the office over the years. That's when you give them points in the company, but not just because they've got, 500,000 fucking brainwashed nitwits that follow them around. You make them legitimately vice presidents of your company. And in 2 years, when everybody's tired of seeing them and you've actually got real stars, you're still stuck with this middle card talent being executive vice presidents, burying the good talent that you bring in so they'll keep their spot. What were you going to say?
Going back to what I was saying, the executive vice presidents are a problem. A lot of the booking is a problem. With that said, I root for AEW over WWE in this, and this Nick Khan interview was a perfect example as to why. Because it's really two different things they're doing, and Tony Khan will put a lot of bad shit on his TV, and Tony Khan will book a lot of stuff that doesn't need to be as stupid as it is. But you listen to this Nick Khan interview. This is a guy just looking to turn WWE, just shoot money at every end of WWE, get rid of talent, revamp things. He loves the idea of Raw being 4 hours because it's another hour of TV that you'll get paid for. That's the mindset. Tony Khan's going to have more talent than he knows. He already has more talent than he knows what to do with.
Well, that could be 3 pieces of talent, but I get what you mean.
But WWE's running off town. Who are they going to start bringing in? The guys that Tony finally starts releasing? Who are they going to bring in?
Oh, all the guys from NXT that they don't want. that they're revamping and gutting and going to change. And here's another thing. Vince McMahon goes to NXT and to pick talent and takes Johnny Ace and Bruce Pritchard with him. Bruce would come to OVW 20 years ago, reluctantly, and the only people that he looked at were the people that he thought that Vince would like based on the look of them. That's why all the OVW guys didn't get brought up that could actually work and were talents. And you got Mark Jindrak's of the world and Johnny Ace pushing guys with no body and 2 left feet as long as they were 6'5" and 250 pounds and looking for girls in lingerie catalogs. And that's not an exaggeration. Several were signed from lingerie catalogs to train to be wrestlers. This is what Vince McMahon is comfortable with. Johnny Ace nor Bruce Pritchard never understood developmental. They never understood the guys that could get over, that wanted to be wrestlers. All they understood was, what will Vince think? What will Vince say? And will Vince yell at us if we give him something that he might not like? And now, because that's what Vince is comfortable with, they're going to developmental. It's 20 years later, only now the part of Jim Cornette and Danny Davis is being played by Triple H and Shawn Michaels, because they don't know what the fuck's being done to their goddamn promotion either. All they know is that most of the people they want to push are getting fired.
Although Nick Khan seemed to indicate that Triple H was involved in the decisions to release talent.
Well, he seemed to indicate, what's he going to say? No, Vince, fire that guy and I quit. I quit the family. I won't be at Christmas. What's he going to say?
Well, it's just important to note that if the spin coming out of certain people is Triple H and Shawn had no idea, we were surprised by this, we didn't know this was coming, and the president of the company is saying, oh, he was involved in all these decisions.
I don't believe any of them if their tongues are notarized. They're all liars.
But
They've all got something to fucking...
But that's the thing. AEW talent believes Tony Khan because he hasn't lied to them. He doesn't play games with them. He says, I'm going to give you all this fucking money.
Yes. And I'm going to give you a lot of money. I'm going to let you do whatever you want and just tell me who you want to wrestle.
That's the thing. That's where it's going to become very interesting. If they really get to a point, they're going to gut NXT. They're going to redo NXT. They're just doing open tryouts, just hoping for anyone to come in that they could turn into a wrestler, versus a company that is embracing people that, for good or for bad, like wrestling, want to be wrestlers, get trained to be wrestlers, work on the indie scene, get brought in, don't get retrained. It's 2 completely different mindsets, and the momentum's with AEW right now.
Yeah. Well, and I'm the only place I'm going to disagree with you is I'm not going to root for AEW over WWE, and I'm not rooting for WWE over AEW. I think they're both embarrassing. And I'm going to root for specific individuals to come out of this train wreck looking better or having more money, like a CM Punk or an FTR or fucking whoever the case. I can't forgive not only people who defiled the wrestling business by having competitive matches with dolls and children. I also cannot forgive a motherfucker that's so fucking mentally warped that he actually books My Little Dog Pockets to be on national television and embarrass the wrestling business. I'm not going to root for any of those people, but I'm going to root for some of the people that go into that company to show what they can do and get over in spite of the rest of the dreck involved and fucking be prosperous. And I'm going to root over on the other side for guys like Walter to come over to just, if they run the rest of the main roster off, maybe they can talk Walter into coming over, and then we can see him versus Kyle and him versus Brock and him versus Reigns and him versus whoever the fuck.
I root for Walter to get out of his contract.
Oh, you know what? Can you see Walter going to AEW? I'll chip in $5,000 just to see one chop on each of the Bucks.
I would too, but AEW so far, other than Andrade, who just is not doing it. And I liked him fine as La Sombra years ago, but this isn't working for me.
And somebody, by the way, answered the question on my Twitter that we asked. I said, can he be understood when he's speaking Spanish by people who speak Spanish? Is it just mush mouth that he in English, right? And somebody said that his Spanish is understandable. He's not a marble mouth. It's just that he's not very interesting in Spanish either. So it's just kind of normal.
But besides him, Malachi Black, I got to say, they've done right by him. They brought him in. He's a lot more interesting than he ever was in WWE. And I think some guys like Walter, if he came in there, I think they would do it right. Now, would the next segment on the show be Orange Cassidy, going for a swim with the librarians or something? Probably. But that segment, like the Punk segment was perfect. What came after it was exactly what you would think. I have faith that if they had Walter, they wouldn't mess it up. I have faith that Vince McMahon had Walter, he'd be in a wig, or he would discover that he likes midgets, or he would have a fetish for
an
dogs.
Imaginary friend.
Yeah, just
an imaginary
something.
Friend.
He gets hit in the head and he loses his accent. It would be something childish and stupid. And that's why I root for AEW, and I don't disagree with anything you said, but I'm looking at the long term. Executive vice presidents don't last forever, in the ring or in the boardroom, unless they have a piece of the company, or unless they're just best friends for life with the person who runs the thing. But I can't say faith, but I root for AEW because I root for Tony Khan to get better at this. And I think because of some of the people he's adding, and because as time goes by, look, are the Bucks as influential in wrestling today as they were 3 years ago? And now that CM Punk's there, is Jericho or Cody or the Bucks or Omega as big as they were a few weeks ago?
No.
It's all changed. So I root for AEW because I think WWE's evil. And I think if Vince is surrounded by Bruce and Johnny Ace, and if Nick Khan doesn't know anything about wrestling, and he doesn't, and he thinks that Bruce and Johnny Ace have any merit in anything they say as opposed to being two guys who couldn't get hired to sell used cars outside of wrestling, that's a problem. That's a fucked up system. It's horrible creative. They've got the advantage. They've got the money. They've got the legacy. I root for AEW because I don't see any signs of WWE getting better under Vince or somewhere else. I don't see any signs of that. Everyone was like, oh, Triple H will take over one day. It'll be great. Show me why you believe that. What in the last 5 years has shown you that will happen? It's not going to happen. And that's what I have to say.
Okay, and here, one other interesting possibility that you didn't mention. You said the words, maybe Tony Khan will get better at this. Do you think that one day when he's got CM Punk and Bryan Danielson and Bray Wyatt and Ric Flair and Adam Cole and this guy and that guy and the other guy, maybe even Booker T, who knows? Do you think that that Tony Khan will perhaps either get rid of some of his excess baggage executive vice presidents or, shock and amazement, hire a booker to use all this great talent? That one act, if he hired a good booker that knew what he was doing, not the fucking indie outlaw shit that they all do. They all know how to do that. It's not hard. But a good talent booker to take the talent roster that he's got, slice some of the gaga off of it, like the Pocketses and the idiots, and concentrate on the stars, that TV show would improve immensely immediately. And that might be, after the acquisition of CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, maybe Bray Wyatt, Ric Flair, whatever, that may be the biggest single step that they could take to increasing their ratings and being a better program, is getting a real booker.
Well, one of the things I always said about WWE is I don't understand why they have all this TV and everything's one style, one WWE way of doing things, even though you have different kind of matches and everything. With AEW and the amount of people Tony has working there, and I'm assuming it's going to go up, not down, even with people getting cut here and there. And he has 2 different TV shows. He has the YouTube shows, more and more talent. He could even hire more than one booker. He could even have a booker that deals with just the talent on the YouTube show. No, I mean, seriously, he could.
I know he could. I could hop up and down on one foot.
I didn't know you were going to turn into Mr. Ed. I don't know what you were doing over there.
No, not more than one booker. That would be worse than not having. Right now, they don't have a booker.
For a split roster. I'm not saying for the same roster.
Having a split roster or 2 bookers is the only thing that's worse than not having a booker at all. No. It needs to be one, whether they call him the booker or the talent coordinator or the writer or whatever they want to call it. One fucking guy. But he's in charge of just like a Bill Watts or an Eddie Graham or anybody that Paul Heyman, when he told him in TNA the position he wanted. I'm in charge of the talent on the roster, hiring them and firing them. I'm in charge of the creative in terms of the booking and the matchmaking, everything that goes on television and everything that every match that takes place on any show. That's the booker, the whatever the phrase they want to use, and that's his job. And if they had a good one, then they could instantly make leaps and bounds in the quality of that program. If they had two, it might be worse than what they've got now, which is one inexperienced amateur and 15 people giving him ideas. That's just me.
What I was going to say is, the thing is with Tony Khan, and we'll move on after this, I just don't know. Not everyone is able to go from being extremely hands-on to being somewhat hands-off when it comes to wrestling, let alone any other business. And Tony Khan, for good or for wrong, has been writing the TV and very hands-on. I mean, from Smoky Mountain, it's going to be hard probably for him to turn that over to someone. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that.
But goddamn,
I'm not saying he shouldn't. I'm not saying he shouldn't, but
I don't know it in that respect, because if you're good at doing something, you don't want to turn something over, right? But if you're not good at something and you can honestly recognize that somebody is better at it and they're willing to do it, I think if somebody said to me, Jim, you need to do the maintenance on your Ford Expedition. Fuck, I couldn't even change the oil. I would be more than happy to hire some knowledgeable, experienced mechanic. And I would pay them to do that because they would do a much better job in a better fashion and easier and simple and quicker than I would. I would not hire that mechanic to book wrestling for me because he could not do that nearly as good or especially not better than I do. Tony Khan has been convinced by the people that he's paying a lot of money to that he is a good booker, but he's not. And if he realized that and turned it over to somebody that was, then that's not a case of it's hard to let things go when you've found somebody. If you have a car wreck, you're on the side of the road, you're trying to tie a fucking handkerchief around somebody's carotid artery so they don't bleed to death. But when the ambulance gets there with the professional equipment and the experience, you fucking back up and say, save this motherfucker's life. I'm just the biggest stumbling block right now with all this talent, with this momentum, with people coming on board in front of the camera and behind the scenes, whatever the case, the biggest detriment now to AEW's success and or winning any kind of conflict with the WWF is that Tony Khan won't get out of his own way. And the only people that are saying this booking is good are marks that have done it in their basement, who identify with Tony because that's where he started, and people that are paying him or that he's paying a lot of money are saying, oh yeah, Tony, you're great. Of course they are. He's paying him a lot of money. But nobody that knows anything about wrestling can legitimately think and say out loud without being laughed at in the company of their peers that Tony Khan is doing good booking. So that's just the end of that statement. That would be, if that happens, even if they've still got Twinkle Toes and the Bucks there to fuck up the tag team division and bury the good talent, if he got an actual booker, I would be willing to bet money that Tony Khan and AEW in the next 6 months could beat the WWE in the ratings. Not every show all the time, but some of the shows some of the time. But that's the biggest thing left. He can get all the stars he wants. And he can let certain people do their own shit and call all of their shots. I'm assuming that's Punk's deal. But sooner or later, you can't let everybody do everything they want. And sooner or later, you've got to have somebody that knows what they're doing to be your booker. So with this talent, all this momentum and everything, if Tony Khan were to actually hire a legitimate booker that knew something about wrestling and had done this before, and I don't even know who that name might be, then he's got a shot right now. But the longer that he continues to try to write this show,
it's never gonna
and or with the input of 15 different people, they are where they are, and they're getting lucky every once in a while. You don't think he'll ever give it up?
I don't think he'll ever give it up, and I think them just getting lucky every once in a while may work against WWE. I don't think WWE is a successful system.
If they got close enough, don't you think that somebody with Jim Ross as just the voice of like your beloved grandfather, or one of the executive vice presidents just thinking, wow, we're close to actually doing this? Wouldn't they go to Tony and say, okay, Tony, time's come. We've got to be professional in every department?
No one is going to go to Tony Khan and say, it's time for you to remove yourself as head of creative. No, because they know how much that means to him. They know how much Booker of the Year means to him. As silly as it is, there's no one who's going to do that. The best hope we have is that he listens to some good voices, that some of the bad voices go away, and that the TV continues to improve while the WWE just has no idea of how to really stand out today. I mean, AEW feels like today. WWE doesn't.
WWE feels like a fucking rash in your crotch.
But at least Tony doesn't have Bruce and Johnny Ace. We'll give him that. But I'll tell you what, we ran really long with this talking about AEW versus WWE. We'll save the Nick Khan interview for the experience.
I thought we talked about the Nick Khan interview.
We did not even go to one quote.
You gave me a quote.
Was that the only quote we went to? That was the only quote we went to in this whole interview.
That was the quote. All right. Well, then we'll bridge it. We'll save it for the experience.
Like I have it right here from PW Insider Elite. Nick Khan on Raw versus SmackDown. Nick Khan on whether WWE is being actively sold. Nick Khan on why there were so many cuts this year and who to blame. On the reboot for NXT. So we'll cover this on the experience. There's a lot to talk about.
All right.
As well as soulless Nick Khan.
We'll talk about NXT and both of AEW's shows this week on the experience as well. And Nick Khan, the Con Man, and he's doing it the Conway and all that. Rob Conway's never got so much love on this program. And all that stuff. We'll do all of that.